correlation. Wondering if you have the same information that I have now relative to what's happening in Washington County and Marietta. It seems that there have been 4 earthquakes, none of which happened prior to the 4 injection wells. Can you tell us, and I'm just reading here that Environmental Resources will be sending some seismology gear to Marietta, right where you are. Do you think there's a direct correlation?
You know, I'm an engineer and scientist, and that's why I want to have a seismic station down there so we can monitor it. And if there is, then I think we should do exactly what you've done up here. Step back, stop injection, and take a look at it and make sure there's not a problem. So that's why we're putting it in.
Mr. Chairman, you would then call for a moratorium on that well and this well or other wells until we can figure out injection wells, period, until we can figure out really who's causing.
No, I would not vote for a moratorium.
No moratorium on the well in Marietta?
Not until I see some definite proof that that's where that is the cause of the earthquakes. If we see repeated events and with the seismometer we put in place, if it's showing that that's the location of it, then I say yes.
Mr. Chairman, and your doctor is saying that you do not have that information, that the 4 earthquakes happened after the 4 injection wells that were in Marietta. That's not convincing enough for you?
Well, I only know of 2 earthquakes, and I experienced
Department of Natural Resources.
2 of them, but I know there have been others that I have heard of those, yes.
Thank you.
And that's why we're putting it in. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Clyde.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm having a little trouble here.
Okay,
Thank you.
we got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Chase, for your testimony and answering some of our questions. One of the things that I keep hearing as a common theme is that there isn't much of a difference between the vertical and horizontal drilling process. And I want to kind of focus in on that. It seems to me that the processes are different in the way that the horizontal process requires a lot more water. It's a much deeper depth, and there's a higher pressure involved. So I'm wondering if the depth, higher pressure, and more water, if those differences in the 2 processes affects the composition of the wastewater in the process.
The processes are not, let me just try to clarify the processes first. In a typical vertical well, when we would drill, as we've done up until the last, say 10 years ago, uses a rotary drilling rig where at the surface, we have pipe that goes down into the earth, and the pipe is rotated at the surface. It turns all the pipe, and at the bottom of the hole is a drill bit that grinds up the rock. We pass fluid down the center of the pipe, through the bit, and up the outside. That brings the rock cuttings that we're generating down there back to the surface. Okay? That's called rotary drilling. When we drill a horizontal borehole, we use a similar process for the vertical section of our borehole, but then to drill the horizontal portion, we use what's called a downhole assembly that has the motor that's actually turning the bit at the very end of the string of pipe. So that now we're not rotating that pipe, because it's hard to rotate pipe as you're going down and out and through a horizontal section, especially through the bend it takes to get there. So the downhole assembly is driven by mud that we still pump down into the center of the pipe and out the bit to bring the cuttings back to the surface. We are drilling deeper. Most of these shale wells are going to be 7,000 to 8,000 feet deep, just for ballpark numbers, compared to most of the wells that we've drilled in Ohio that were probably less than 5,000 feet deep, although we have gone vertical on a number of wells, which is how we got so much information to tell us that the shale is there and the shale had potential to produce. We do use more water in the process of fracturing the well, but as Mr. Stewart said, if you can imagine this room, again, I love this room, it's 1,280 acres in size. And if we were to drill vertical wells the way we did 10 years ago, every 40 acres, we would have put a vertical well. We would have had 36 wells in this room to drain 1,280 acres. What we're doing now is instead of destroying the landscape 36 times, we're putting one pad that's about 5 acres in size, say in the center of this room. And from the center of that room, we'll drill 8 to 12 vertical and then out to horizontal wells. And we'll be able to drain the same amount of acreage all using just those 8 to 12 wells drilled from a 5-acre pad. Now, the savings there in terms of the environment are great. It's the most efficient way that we could possibly drill wells. How did this technology evolve? Well, you can look back to offshore drilling, where we set a platform out in the Gulf of Mexico, and because we can't move those platforms around the way we do a drilling rig on land, we learned to drill offshore directionally. And the technology we're using onshore is a direct offshoot of that technology. It's just that we had never used it before, and we had never tried to conquer a reservoir like the shale. Shale is not like a good sandstone rock. It's very hard to use. And again, as Mr. Stewart said, if you imagine 36 wells draining this area, every one of those wells would have had to be vertically fractured and would have used a lot of water. But now we're taking 8 to 12 wells in the center and we're fracturing those horizontals. And I have not done any calculations to show how similar that is, whether the volumes for the 36 would equal the volume of water used in the 8 to 12 wells. But I would bet in the long run it's probably pretty similar.
Yeah.